When you think of elections, you may think of the Malagasy presidential elections, the Maltese presidential elections, or even the elections in the People's Republic of China. If you thought of none of these, that is important, because this video is about elections in the Holy Roman Empire anyways. These elections vary greatly from modern elections, as in women haven't got the right to vote yet, not even all men could vote, and there were still property restrictions on voting. Wait a second, there aren't even political parties yet, or even political ideologies? Is it even 1776 yet? Let me guess, the year is 1002 and the Emperor just died. To get started, throw out everything you know about elections in the Holy Roman Empire. That knowledge is either from, or some other game. All games I know of use a system of imperial elections codified by the Golden Bull of 1356, which explicitly names the electors involved in imperial elections. These did change over time, but this general system was only established in the imperial elections of the 1190s. However, today I will be talking about the first imperial election in 1002. This just so happens to be before the 1190s. In 1002, Otto III of the Anatolian dynasty died without any heirs. His parents were clearly full of creativity when they created that one though, Otto III Ottonian. That aside, he died at the ripe old age of 21, clear proof of the Middle Ages, when people died in their Middle Ages. Yes, I know that is a myth, and the reason for the low life expectancy being so low in the first place was because of the high infant and child mortality rate. I just couldn't let that pun get. Now, there were elections since the Holy Roman Empire was founded, but those were always controlled by the current emperor, of which there was none at this time. That is why the various princes thought of deciding on a new ruler through elections rather than a great big free-for-all. Many people actually wanted to be the emperor of a large and still relatively centralized, by medieval standard, empire, so fittingly many people decided to run. There were some candidates which had a better chance of winning than others. This is why I'll separate these into two categories: strong and weak candidates. This is so that you will remember the important ones and not none of them at all. There will not be a test. Strong candidates include Eckard I, Eckard I, the Margrave of Meissen, Henry IV, the exuberant Ottonian, the Duke of Bavaria, and lastly Herman II the Good, Conradin, the Duke of Swabia. Weak candidates include Bernard I Blount, Duke of Saxony, Otto Carolingian, Duke of Lorraine, Otto I Salian, Duke of Worms, Theodoric Arden-Bar, Duke of Upper Lorraine, and any dukes I missed that were a part of the Holy Roman Empire. All of these people were brought up as possible candidates. The goal for each of these candidates was to get a majority support for their candidacy from the bishops and princes of a majority of the 6 regions of the Holy Roman Empire. Basically, think of the electoral college in the US, but there are only like 20 people voting per state, only 6 states, and every state only gets 1 overall vote. All but one of the candidates were dukes. The exception was Eckard I, who was a margrave. Due to his lower rank, he might not have had a shot at being elected if it wasn't for the fact that he was greatly favored by Emperor Otto III. Apparently, the princes and bishops of the Holy Roman Empire had loved Otto III despite his long de facto reign of 6 years and the instability caused by a large empire being ruled de jure by a 3-year-old. Speaking of Emperor Otto III, his funeral was an important time for the gathering of support among the future electors. Henry IV had no hope of winning the election yet, as Emperor Otto III had tried to exclude him whenever he had the opportunity. This forced Henry IV to take drastic measures at the funeral. Having possession of the imperial regalia was enough to justify her claim on the Holy Roman Empire, and he was gonna get himself a claim. What was important among the imperial regalia was the Holy Lance, which dated back to the 700s. Conveniently enough, the funeral procession contained the imperial regalia and was moving through Henry IV's territory in February 1002. Henry IV had great concern for the procession and took great care of it while robbing the procession of the imperial regalia. The procession actually predicted this and had secretly sent the Holy Lance through Henry IV's territory earlier. This angered Henry IV, so he imprisoned the procession leader and his brother. As a side note, he actually befriended the procession leader later in his life. During the chaos of this, Ardoin de Ivrea declared himself to be the King of Italy on February 15, 1002. He had been excommunicated 2 years earlier in frequent conflict with the church. However, he was ignored for the time being, so I will ignore him too. The funeral of Emperor Otto III was planned for Easter. Among attendees, Herman II was the most popular of the candidates. This gave way to overconfidence and lack of campaigning. On the other hand, the situation remained bleak for Henry IV, until he finally legitimized his previously weak candidacy by donating vast sums of money to fund Otto III's funeral. Many Saxons also wished for the emperor to remain from a Saxon dynasty, and desired for Henry IV to become emperor for this reason. More importantly, Henry IV promised a weaker candidate, Otto I of Sicilian, the title of the Duke of Carinthia in exchange for his support, which Otto I probably complied with. Now that Otto I of Sicilian was out of the picture, Henry IV was the closest relative of Emperor Otto III and gained a lot of support for this. This included his own duchy, Bavaria, where almost nobody had been supporting him previously. Henry IV had finished playing catch-up to legitimize himself as the candidate. He and Eckard I started major campaigning. Looking at the situation from Eckard I's perspective, he had already secured support in Thuringia, while Herman II and Henry IV had secured their home regions. This left Lotharingia, of which there is no historical data for, the Eastern Franks, which were basically secured by Henry IV, and Saxony, which leans towards Henry IV. Picking at random, and totally not because it was the easiest, Eckard I chose a campaign in Saxony. He traveled to Schoenbeck to try and gain Saxon support. The Saxons were not at all impressed and refused to nominate him. Secretly, they had other reasons. However, he did convince them to meet with him at Verla later. Apparently, Margrave Othar of Nordmark and a completely different Henry, who's the Margrave of Nordgau, supporters of Henry IV, convinced the Saxons not to support Eckard I under any circumstances. This other Henry was promised the Duchy of Bavaria by Henry IV in return for his support and help, and was only motivated to do this for that reason. When the Saxons got together to meet at Verla, this other Henry started to make promises that Henry IV could not keep in order to secure their votes for Henry IV and not Eckard I. On the other hand, Eckard I secured favor with Bernard I, the Duke of Saxony, who withdrew from gaining a weaker candidate in favor of Eckard I. However, Henry IV still controlled all but 2 of the Saxons. Despite Henry IV's clear victory over him at Schoenbeck and Verla, Eckard I continued campaigning elsewhere in Saxony and Lotharingia. These campaigns were more successful in actually drawing supporters among the local rulers. This included a meeting with another strong candidate, Herman II. Meanwhile, Henry IV had secured the support of a foreign power, Poland. King Boleslaw I, the Brave of Poland, was promised the Margraviate of Meissen in return for opposing Eckard I. Of course, Eckard I was the Margrave of Meissen, and was sure to lose his title and maybe something more if he lost the election. However, he did not know this yet. Due to an actual success at Verla, Eckard I started raising a sizable opposition in Saxony to Henry IV, but he was actually too successful. On April the 30th, he unexpectedly died when he was killed by 3 of his Saxon rivals. Luckily, his body was left intact enough to guarantee that it would be closely examined by the top forensic scientists in the Holy Roman Empire. For some reason, there weren't any, so he was examined by funeral goers instead. Now, I shall open this cold case file from over 1,000 years ago to find out what really happened to Eckard I on April 30th and why it happened. Apparently he wasn't only killed, but he was murdered. The murder was known to have been committed by Count Siegfried of Northeim, Henry, and Udo, who all happened to be Saxons who didn't support Eckard I after Verla. Apparently, they were only known as rivals of Eckard I a very short time before Eckard I was murdered. We also know that they probably met at Verla, which also happened to be in April and thus part of the same month. This makes it clear that they either killed Eckard I to help Henry IV in the election, or killed him because they became rivals after he started to pose a threat to Henry IV in the election. Either way, Eckard I was killed by these 3 men to help Henry IV win the election. Either way, Eckard I was murdered, so only Henry IV and Herman II remained as viable candidates for the election. Upon finishing the meeting in Verla, Henry IV said that he had finished campaigning, so he marched his army to Mainz. Gee, I sure wonder what would bring an army to the location of an election. Once he arrived, he requested that the Archbishop of Mainz would crown him in Mainz after a possibly successful election rather than in Aachen. That was actually very suspicious, as usually the next emperor would be crowned in Aachen rather than in Mainz. In June, the electors started arriving for the elections. On June 7th, Henry IV demanded that the election be started early. The electors from Thuringia and Saxony have not even arrived yet, as they are still on their way. The Bavarian, Eastern Frankish, and Swabian electors had arrived and will be the only ones voting. Drum roll, please. What? No? Why? How? Oh, well, did you expect this? The winner is Henry IV Ottonian, former Duke of Bavaria, and now the Holy Roman Emperor. He shall be known as Henry II and... Stop that! Bohemia, shortly after the election, joined the Holy Roman Empire after the nobles deposed the previous Duke, Boleslaus III. Anyways, here are the final results. The Bavarians and Eastern Franks voted for Henry IV, while the Swabians voted for Herman II. Now that Henry II has won, I would like to point out that this election was irregular in a whole lot of ways. Not all the electors got to vote. The coronation is usually taking place in Aachen, but took place in Mainz. Henry II didn't even sit in the throne of Charlemagne, and this is not even mentioning all the ways it was practically rigged. The fact that not all the electors even voted at all forced Henry II to travel across the empire and forced his rulers to submit to him. This system was last used in the Frankish Empire in 741 and would never be used again in the Holy Roman Empire afterwards. The Swabians, whom Herman II led, were clearly angry about the results and refused to recognize the results at first. After a few months, they did recognize the results, and Henry II as emperor on October 1st. Surprisingly enough, Henry II's own vassals, the Bavarians, were actually the last to recognize the results, and they did so in mid-November. Even more surprising is the fact that the Saxons never recognized the results at all. They recognized Henry II as emperor in return for rights and getting to hold another election for the next emperor only among the Saxons. Needless to say, Henry II had to win, and so he did. Henry II ruled the Holy Roman Empire until his death in 1024. In 1029, just 5 years later, the Ottonian dynasty went extinct. Henry II was canonized as a saint in 1147. If you're a Catholic and want to celebrate his vastly greater good and virtuous side and his massive amount of support for the church, you can do so on his feast day on July 13th. Duke Herman II of Swabia died a natural death in May of 1003. After his death, Henry II forcefully became the regent of Swabia. In 1012, Herman III died, and with him, the Conradine dynasty went extinct. The other Henry of Nordgau did not get the Duchy of Bavaria like he was promised. Emperor Henry II responded by saying that the Bavarians had the right to elect their own duke. Bavaria would not have another regional election until 1818. Actually, this is like how the Saxons never received the things that Henry of Nordgau had promised them earlier. Henry of Nordgau was not the only one who was refused land. Emperor Henry II had promised King Boleslaus I of Poland Meissen in return for his support against Eckard I. Shortly after Eckard I's death, King Boleslaus I invaded the Holy Roman Empire to secure his claim on Meissen, amid the chaos of Eckard I's death. He was successful and occupied the territories of the Holy Roman Empire, all the way to the Elbe River. To settle this dispute, he attended a meeting with Emperor Henry II at Merseburg in late July. However, Henry II cheaped out and gave Poland the March of Schleswig, not even what King Boleslaus I had wanted. When King Boleslaus I was returning to Poland, he was almost assassinated. However, Duke Bernard I of Saxony, Margrave Henry of Nordgau, and some other German nobles saved the king from this attempt. It is fairly obvious that it was probably Emperor Henry II who attempted this assassination, and these people surely thought so. This can be seen with how Boleslaus I seized and sacked the German town of Strela on his way back to Poland in retaliation. This sparked a war between Boleslaus I and Henry II, but never escalated until later. However, historical sources disagree with Henry II having been behind the assassination attempt. This means that I can neither confirm nor deny the fact that Emperor Henry II was behind this, but I will say that Emperor Henry II being behind it seems much more correct than any other option. In January of 1003, King Boleslaus I sought to restore the claim to the Duchy of Bohemia, Boleslaus III back to the throne, so he declared war on the Duke of Bohemia. This was because the ruler of Bohemia, Vladislav, had just died. Boleslav III retook Bohemia in February and murdered the nobleman who had overthrown him earlier in 1002. After he had regained Bohemia, he refused to become Henry II's vassal like Vladislav did. This caused Boleslav III to declare war on the Holy Roman Empire before Boleslav I's war with the Holy Roman Empire to escalate. King Boleslav I wanted to expand the war effort and decided to ally with Henry II's enemies, including Henry of Norgau. However, in March, the remaining Bohemian nobles, which had survived Boleslav III's murderous rampage, sent messengers to King Boleslav I of Poland and requested for Boleslav I's help in saving them. King Boleslav I complied. He blinded Boleslav III and imprisoned him. Justice had been served to Boleslav III, but now King Boleslav I was down one ally. Shortly afterwards, King Boleslav I conquered Bohemia for himself. However, what the Bohemians did not know was that they had traded one tyrant for another, and so they had to wait to be freed yet again. Henry of Norgau lost the war in August of the same year, leaving King Boleslav I all alone. Meanwhile, Poland occupied Moravia, Slovakia, Lusatia, and Meissen. During this, the Holy Roman Empire was busy securing an alliance with the Pomeranian and pagan Lutetia. This was controversial among many Germans, specifically the Saxons and the clergy, as this meant that the Christianization of the Lutetia that had been going on since 965 had stopped. However, the Lutetia-German alliance proved successful, and they retook Lusatia in February of 1004. However, the winter conditions forced them to withdraw, and they hadn't even reached the Prussian border yet. They re-entered Bohemia in August of 1004 and quickly disposed of the Polish garrison as the populace revolted. Jaromir, who had struck a deal with Emperor Henry II earlier, retook his title and landed as the Duke of Bohemia. By the way, Jaromir was the person who was actually supposed to succeed Vladislav to become the Duke of Bohemia. In autumn 1004, Henry II retook Meissen from Polish rule. He invaded in autumn instead of winter, which isn't much different, but it was different enough. After this, he advanced his forces all the way to Poznan. Once there, he signed the Peace of Poznan, in which Bohemia still lost Moravia to Poland, but Meissen and Lusatia were secured in German hands. This can also be added on to that weird list of peace treaties where the victors lost land or other stuff. However, the pagan Pomeranians in Poland revolted and recovered their independence from Polish rule in 1007 as well. So Poland did lose some land after all. That ends the story of the first phase of the German-Polish War. Now it took up a whole page of my script for my video not even primarily about it. Although Eckard I died before the election was over, his dynasty would rule the Margrave of Meissen until their extinction in 1046. Also, this is just me trying to avoid diving into another page-long rabbit hole about a topic even less related to the Imperial election of 1002. Ardoin to Ivrea, the king of Italy, did not go unchallenged by Henry II. Henry II sent his force of Corinthians to attack Ardoin in 1003, but they were quickly defeated by Ardoin. Ardoin caught the Corinthians so quickly that their advance isn't even large enough to be shown on this map. After this loss, Henry II personally led his own troops into Italy in April of 1004. He defeated Ardoin and was crowned King of Italy on May 14, 1004. The populace disapproved of this, so he went ahead and sacked one of his newly gained Italian towns. Meanwhile, Ardoin retreated to the Orgo Mountains. In 1014, he finally surrendered his remaining territory and his pretender status, the Emperor Henry II. The first not controlled election in the Holy Roman Empire featured some of the most electors out of any election in the Holy Roman Empire. However, it also featured the murder of one of the candidates, broken promises, the prevention of some electors from even voting, and even more corruption. On the other hand, around 120 rulers could have possibly voted. There were actual campaigns in multiple different candidates. Imperial elections would improve over time regarding corruption, but would worsen regarding the decreasing number of electors. This was the first of many elections to come in the Holy Roman Empire, and not everything had been established quite yet.